Hey YouTubers, as you guessed it, I got another review for you today. This one's from a company called MXMOONFREE, and this is a 12 volt, 3000 watt power inverter, 6000 watt surge, and I've had this thing for probably going on 2 months now, and I'm just now getting around to doing the review on it. I ended up with some kidney stones, and man, you talk about hurting. So anyways, I've opened it up and looked on the inside of it, just kind of peeked around to make sure there was no shipping damage or any of that. But as far as pulling it out and taking an actual look at it, I have not. So we're kind of looking at it together. So I went ahead and cut the top out of it. You can see you got your owner's manual, you got your typical packing stuff. You got a couple power cables and a positive and negative. And then there's some hardware and then some extra fuses. Alright, so I went ahead and unboxed it, and you can see this is it. This is the 3000 watt. It says DC AC pure sine wave power inverter, and we're going to be testing it today to make sure that it is a pure sine wave inverter. But just first glance, looking out of the box, it looks pretty good. The quality of it looks pretty decent. One thing that I thought was a little unusual was this little old style carrying handle on top. But when you pick this thing up, you realize why you need that handle. This thing weighs 17.6 pounds according to the website. I haven't tested it, but I would say that's pretty accurate because this thing's, it is heavy. I ain't gonna lie. Turning it over to the side here, you've got dual cooling fans, and then you got the spot right here to connect your positive and negative cables. And one thing that I noticed on the connections here is they're both side by side, so you got to be very, very careful when connecting these cables to the wires there, because if you don't have these nice and tight, these lugs nice and tight, and one of them wants to accidentally lean over and this one wants to kind of lean over, you could make a connection. So make sure that you got these nice and tight. And if it was me, I would probably wrap some electrical tape over the lugs just to make sure that there's no kind of short circuit and start a fire and all that kind of stuff. Now the cables, they look okay, but they're a little too small, I believe, for 3000 watts. I wouldn't even put 3000 watts on these cables, just to be honest with you. And that's very common with a lot of Chinese inverters. They don't put big enough wiring, but you know, that doesn't mean that the inverter's no good. I would go for like some New Concepts cables. I'll put a link down in the description for New Concepts so you guys can take a look and see what I use on all my inverters. But anyways, we're going to set these to the side and we'll use these in our testing. We'll see if they heat up, but these should be good as long as you don't try to push the inverter past probably 2000 watts. You know, I would say this would be safe up to 2000 watts, but you always want to make sure when you do install these cables that you do use a fuse if you're going to permanently mount it or whatever. Look here on the other end, and you've got 3 grounded AC plug-ins, and then right down here you've got a little cap that pops off where you can hardwire right directly into the inverter. And then they just put this little cap over there. I guess it just clips on just like that, and then to keep from short circuiting or whatever. But this is pretty nice that there's 3. Most of the time there's usually only 2, so they did give you a little extra space. Now I will say right there for the hard wiring, that is kind of close to the bottom of the mount right there. So there's not a whole lot of area. So I guess whenever you hardwire it in, you would probably want to run your wires up, because I don't think you'd have enough room to run them down. If you did, it wouldn't be much room. So looking at the end of the inverter here, you've got a typical on and off switch. I guess I'm kind of old-fashioned. I prefer the switches. Some of these newer inverters have the buttons, but I still actually like the switches a little bit better. And there's a green light, a red light, and then right here below is a USB port. Also, I wanted to point out that it has an LCD screen. I know it's not lit up right now, but there is a little screen right in here. And then there's also an optional remote control if you wanted to get that. You can purchase it separately, but it is a Bluetooth screen, and it pretty much just tells you everything that's right here on the side. That way you don't have to look at the side. You can actually remotely mount it somewhere else, or if you've got an inverter on one part of the house, you can probably move that Bluetooth screen and mount it somewhere else and just use it as a monitor. Now, I'm not sure of the range and all that because I don't have one to test, but just thought that was pretty cool. I've never seen that option on any other power inverter. So this inverter is on Amazon right now for $359.90 something. So it is pretty economical price for a 3,000 watt inverter. It's probably not the cheapest. It's probably not the most expensive. It's just kind of somewhere in between. So I just wanted to do some measurements on the power inverter, and from the very end to end is 18 inches. And when I say end to end, that's to the end right there of those where you would mount your lugs, and then to the very end where this little plastic piece is sticking out. And then as far as front to back, 8 1/8. And then the height, you're at, let's just say 3 1/2 with this handle. It's going to probably stick up just a little bit higher, but I measured to like the top of right there. So these are just rough estimates. They're as close as I could get. So the wire measures about 22 inches. So you've got the positive and negative. They're both 22 inches apiece, and that's from the end of the lug on each end. So they give you a pack of hardware. I'm gonna dump all this out. So they give you 10 40 amp flat bladed fuses to replace if you happen to pop one, and you'd replace these internally. So they should be easily replaceable. You just pop them out, put the new ones in, and then they give you the nut, the lock washer, and the flat washer to mount your cables here onto these terminals. And then next they send you a manual, and then it's got this after sales service card. Basically thanks you for your purchase. It says it's got a 1-year warranty, including technical guidance and free accessories except consumable. It says they'll reply within 24 hours, and then it gives you their contact information. So there's a QR code right here where you can scan this and I guess reach them and find out some product information and some videos. So that's pretty nice. You don't hardly see that very much anymore. And then the manual, I'll be honest, I haven't looked through this at all, but actually it looks pretty good. The print is really nice and big. A lot of it manuals that they send on some of these Chinese inverters is so small you can't hardly read it, and then some of the information's not correct. But actually this one looks pretty dang good. Probably one of the best manuals I've actually ever seen. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys how to hook this up. I know a lot of people put the hardware on there wrong, so I'm going to show you just how to do it. Go ahead and slide your terminal or your lug over your terminal there, and then you want to take your flat washer. They give you a flat washer. You put it on first, then you put your split ring or lock washer, whatever you want to call it, and then you put your nut right there on top. And this here is a 10 millimeter. Go ahead and tighten it down, and then you take 10 millimeter socket or wrench, whatever you want to use, and do not have these connected to the battery when you're hooking it up. And just be careful. Some people, if you're not careful using metal tools like this, you don't want to short it out, shock yourself, or blow your power inverter up or all that. So just be very, very careful. And then when you go to tighten these up, You ain't got to put 100 foot-pounds on them, but you do want them tight to where they don't move. And you can see I've kind of angled that one away just a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the other one on. I'll probably angle it the opposite way just a little bit because I do not want them to touch. Alright, so one thing I will say that I like about this inverter is there's a big contact area right there, big metal area to mount your lug. And these lugs here that's on this wire aren't very big, so if you're using your own lugs and you're going to use copper or whatever, then you'll have a nice big mounting area to mount your heavier duty wire and cable lugs on. So I like that. So the battery that we're going to be using to test this inverter is going to be the Redodo 200 amp hour. This is the lithium iron phosphate battery, and this is the plus model. This is the one with the 200 amp BMS. This thing is a beast. I've been running this thing for probably, well, all summer long, running a 12,000 BT unit air conditioner. I mean, every day. And whenever I want to do testing and stuff, this is the battery I go to. I really have enjoyed this battery, and it has served me well. So anyways, I'm got the positive cable here isolated from the negative, and I'm gonna go ahead and see how these terminals mount up. And you can see that this is the correct size hole there for like an M8 bolt that you'll find on all the batteries. So it does fit good. Always just tighten these up with a screwdriver. And then one major thing you need to do before you connect both wires is to prevent sparks or blowing the capacitors that's inside this inverter from charging too fast, because basically what you're going to be doing is getting a lot of power out of this battery, and it's going to be flowing right into that inverter, and it's going to be charging those capacitors really quickly, and you don't want them to blow. So what you want to do is take a resistor and hook it to the end of your wire. Just hold it with your finger, and then you just touch it right down to that battery. And I leave mine on there for a good 30 seconds. That way, there's no sparks or anything like that. And so this is just a ceramic resistor, and I've got these down below in the description if you're interested in it. We do have an affiliate link. We just now started it. We figured it'd be a little way to make a little bit of money. And watch this, when you go to connect them, there's no spark. There was no spark whatsoever. So we figured that'd be a good way for us to make just a little extra money. It don't cost you guys anything extra when you buy it from Amazon. Just click on our link below if you're looking for that particular product, and it'll take you right to it. All right, so I went ahead and got everything hooked up. I'm gonna flip it on, and you can see right there's an LCD screen. And right away it says the input is 13.7 volts. The output is at between 119 and 20 volts. Then it shows that there's a pure sine wave right there, or the symbol for it. And then it says it's at 60 hertz, and that's what we use here in the United States, is 60 hertz. And then your output power is at 0, because obviously there's nothing plugged into it. But we're going to be changing that soon. Alright guys, so as I said, I'm going to measure the sine wave. And so I've got a little extension cord that runs right up here to this little plastic electrical box. I drilled a hole in the side where I could get to the terminals and plug in my alligator clip there. And then on this side, I put a little hole in there so I can put my probe in there, and that'll show the sine wave. And then right in here, we can measure everything, the watts and the hertz and all that good stuff. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and measure the sine wave. Just going to take and stick my probe in the side. You can see right there, it's a nice clean sine wave. And it actually looks really good, and that's with no load on it. And it might change a little bit once we put some load on it, but we'll test it out. Now, as far as the gauge down here, it says it's at 60 hertz and that it's putting out 120 volts. We can take and find your voltage right here. it's at 118.9, 119. So right down there it says 120. So it's just a little bit off, but that's an acceptable range. 118 is very good. As far as the hertz, let's see here. It says we're at 60.2, and that is exactly where we need to be. So as you can see, I've got a pure sine wave with no load, and I went ahead and switched out the kilowatt meter with this watt meter that has a backlit display on it. I've got these in my link down below. I am an Amazon affiliate, so if you buy this, I get a small commission. It don't cost you anymore. But anyways, these are like 10 bucks. They're about the third of a cost of a kilowatt meter. So anyways, I figured I would use this one. I figured it'd be a little bit easier for you guys to see. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 1500 watt heater, and it'll take me a few minutes. You can see as soon as I plug it in, it shows 0.9 watts, and that's just the display on the heater. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And you can see I turned it on high. It's at 962 watts. It's climbing now. Went to 1,000. Now it's at 14, 1500, 1530, 1545. And you can see back here the oscilloscope. Now let me see. Let me move it up here for you. You can see the oscilloscope is still, even with a 1500 watt load, it's still nice and clean. So I gotta say the signal is really clean on this. I don't see any kind of distortion or anything like that. So I'm pretty impressed with that. You can still see it's putting out 1394 watts. So we're gonna run it a few minutes and see just how it does. See if it cuts off or anything. This is about roughly about halfway of what this inverter should be able to do. And anyways, I'm going to go ahead and plug in another device and really kick it up. But keep in mind, I will have to unplug this. We know this one puts out about 1400 watts, a little over 15 when it first starts up. There's a surge. It puts out over 1500 watts. I think I've recorded up to about 1530 watts right when you plug that heater in. And anyways, I don't want to burn my watt meter up, but because if I plug anything that goes above 1800 watts into it, it will burn the meter up. So we know this one puts out about 14 to 1500 watts, and then whatever I plug in here, I'll go ahead and test prior with the kilowatt meter or the watt meter, and we'll know what kind of total wattage we'll be getting between the two. And I'll try to make it as high as I can to put this inverter through the paces. Now, one thing I will say, it's been running a few minutes and I hadn't heard the fans kick on. So let's kick that load up a little bit higher and see if we can make those fans kick on and make some noise. So let me get it all set up and I'll be right back. All right, guys, so we're back. We were able to squeeze the hair dryer down below. I'm sorry, the heater down below, and put the hair dryer up above. And we've got just a little Infinity Pro Conair hair dryer. This thing puts out anywhere from 484 to 486 watts on the low setting, and about 835 watts on the high setting. So we're going to be running it on the high setting along with the heater, the space heater down below. And like I said, it puts out about 1388 watts and when it stables out, and then it has a surge to about 1530 watts. So let's just call it 1400 watts and then 835 watts for that hair dryer. So we've got the 1500 or the 1500 watts going on the heater down below. It's already running, so it should be stabled out at about 1400 watts. And then now we're going to kick the hair dryer on. Now keep in mind that's going to put us around 2300 watts. That should be a nice little load on this power inverter. All right, guys, so I've got the 1500 watt space heater going down below, and it's plugged in right here on the bottom of this receptacle. And then here on the top, I've got this hair dryer, and it puts out about 835 watts on high. And I can't plug both of these into this kilowatt meter because this one's only rated for about 1800 watts max. So we know this one down here puts out about 1400 watts. I think it's 1388 watts on low. Once it's stable, I'm sorry, on high. Once it stables out, but once you first plug it in, it surges up to about 1530 watts. So simple math says 835 watts plus, let's just call it 1400 watts. That puts us at about 2235 watts total. So that'll be a nice little push for this inverter, and that'll keep me from going over the, what I can do with that 200 amp battery with the BMS. I don't want the battery to shut down or all that. So I'm just gonna put a nice little load on it, run it for a few minutes. And you can see with this big load on it that there is very little distortion on the oscilloscope there. It's actually staying really clean. So I'm impressed with the sine wave. And you can see right there on the meter, it says 836 watts. So this thing is putting out quite a bit. This thing says right over here, it says 2305 watts is what this thing is using. And it's at 60 hertz, shows that it's still at a pure sine wave, and the input voltage is 12.5, 12.1, it's fluctuating a little bit, and the output's at 118 volts. So if you look right here at the oscilloscope, the sine wave's still nice and clean. There's just a little bit of distortion, but that's to be expected with running this kind of wattage. And as far as the fans, let's see if they've kicked on or not. Yes, the fans have kicked on. Let me get around here and I'll show you guys. And they don't seem really noisy. I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with that. Now the cables here are hot. Man, they are hot. Whew. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't use the cables. Let me test this out real quick before it gets too crazy hot, and I'll let you know what the temperatures are of the cables and see if there's any hot spots. All right, guys. So you can see the cables right there through the thermal camera, and it shows they're about 140 degrees right there at the terminals. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it down just because that's a little too hot for my liking. It says 120 right out here, 130, 140 up close to where they mount. So I'm going to go ahead and turn everything off right quick. All right, guys. So now I turned the inverter, the load off the inverter, the hair dryer and the heater. I got it turned off, and I literally just turned it off just a second ago. And you can see right there with the thermal camera, get right there at the lugs, you can see that it's super hot, 150 degrees. So definitely don't use these cables if you're planning on pushing this thing. Definitely don't use the cables. If you're going to use it probably under 2,000 watts, it might be okay, but I would definitely feel a lot safer using some thicker cables. But I gotta say, now the inverter, it doesn't look that hot. Let me zoom in and zoom out there on the inverter, and I gotta say, the inverter doesn't look like it's very hot. It's showing about 93 degrees right there in the middle where the handle is. So I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with that. It's just it seems like the cables are pretty much just the problem. But that's a simple fix. Just replace the cables And you can see right up here at the battery, you know, it's at the battery it shows that they're only about 82 degrees. Maybe a little bit hotter. Let's see. That one shows about 100 and about 144 degrees right there on that one. I know when I grab a hold of these, I mean they're pretty dang hot. I don't think I would be able to touch that metal right there. Yeah, they're pretty warm. So yeah, if it was me, I would definitely replace the cables. But as far as the inverter, it proved to be, you know, able to handle that load. All right, guys. Well, I gotta say, after that load test, I'm pretty impressed with the actual inverter. The inverter did really well. It's just barely warm, honestly. I mean, it feels like it's just a little above room temperature. Yeah, it's like 88 degrees, 85 degrees, 84 degrees, 83, 82, 80, 79. So yeah, it's a little cooler on that end, and then a little warmer on this end where the cooling fans are. But it makes more sense that it's warmer on this end because this is where your connections are, where those lugs hook to, and those cables get really hot on this end, and they're actually still warm. I mean, literally, they're about 80, 95 degrees right there at the lug. So that tells me that if I was going to use this inverter, I would definitely switch to a bigger cable. So this is the cable that I use. This stuff is from a company called New Concepts, and their spelling is weird. It's KNUKONCEPTZ. So it's New Concepts, and I have been using this stuff for years now. I have a pretty good sound system in my truck, and I'm running like a 370 amp alternator. And when I went to MXMOONFREE alternators in Knoxville, Tennessee, and they installed the alternator for me, this is the wiring that I used for that install. And man, I'm telling you, I've been very, very pleased with it. This stuff is very flexible. This here is called the Colossus Flex by New Concepts, and this is a 1/0 cable. This stuff here is oxygen-free copper, and you can see that it has 5,145 strands of copper in there. So this is like the best wiring money can buy, and you know, it is super conductive, and you know, the jacket is really thick, and you just won't find a better wiring out there. So if I was going to replace these, I would definitely use this. Been very pleased with this stuff. If you're interested, there is a Amazon affiliate link down below, and I try to put everything that I use in this video down in that Amazon affiliate links. So if you're interested in doing the same thing, you can do it. Now I'll go ahead and tell you, if you're using this wire, you definitely won't get that kind of heat, and they also have some good cable lugs. But then I use some of the Cell Term brand ones on Amazon. You can check those out. They're really thick copper, and they've always worked good for me, and they're pretty cheap. But as far as the inverter goes, I gotta say the fans are pretty quiet. They do a good job at keeping it nice and cool, and the inverter puts out good power. Like I said, we put about a 2300 watt load on it, and you know, it held up. I just was scared to push it any further with these cables, but there's no doubt that it would have handled it if I'd switched and put bigger cables on there. I just don't have any made up where I would have. But anyways, I appreciate you guys watching this video, and if you would, please help me out and subscribe to my new channel here. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can make just a little bit of money and help keep me motivated to further my channel along. And as you guys see, you know, I've been getting more and more testing equipment, and you know, the oscilloscope and all the watt meters and the thermal cameras and the infrared thermometers and all this kind of stuff. And so this stuff's not cheap, and you know, it does take a lot of time to set all this stuff up and actually do the testing and be, you know, accurate in the testing, and you know, do a good job for you guys. So it saves you guys a lot of time and hassle. And so just help me out and subscribe to my channel and all that. And if you see something that you want to buy, off the Amazon affiliate. It doesn't cost you guys any more, but it does give us a little bit of commission to help us further the channel along. And until next time, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.